Hi friends! So I only have a few minutes. I'm leaving on a trip tomorrow and I wanted to review this book before I went so that it was still fresh on my mind. But I haven't had time to sort of collect all of my thoughts on it, so I hope this comes out comprehensively. So this book that I love so much is A Gentleman in Moscow by Amor Towles. I loved this book and there were a lot of reasons why I loved this book, but at the end of the day, I think that what makes a book 5 stars, which is what I gave this book, is the emotion that I have immediately after finishing the book. And in reading the last sentences and even the last few chapters and pages of this book was just glee. I mean, there were moments of sort of uncertainty or suspense, but overall I was just adoring what this book was doing to me. I was loving it. But I'm getting ahead of myself, and let me tell you about this book. This book takes place in Russia in 1922, in Moscow. It begins with a poem, and then we are reading the transcript of a Bolshevik tribunal, which is the trial of Alexander Rostov. He was an aristocrat under the old regime, but now, after the Bolshevik Revolution, he was on trial. He had written the poem that we just read in younger years, which was a call to rebellion or revolution against the previous regime. So as far as the Bolsheviks are concerned, that is a positive for him. However, the man that sits before them seems to be an unapologetic gentleman or nobility, and there's no room for him in their now Marxist communist regime. Because of those two things, and then the icing on the cake is the connections that he has, they decide they can't execute him, but they don't want to let him go free because he could still cause them trouble later on. So they put him under house arrest. I should mention he's about 30 years old right now, and as a gentleman, he is staying, and has been for several years, in the Metropole Hotel in Moscow. So that is where he's put under house arrest. The Metropole Hotel, in addition to being in Moscow, is actually in central Moscow, across the street from the Kremlin. And he's told if he ever leaves the hotel, he will be shot on sight. Count Alexander Rostov goes back to the hotel. He's moved from his suite up to what were previously servants' quarters, and that's where we begin. The Metropole Hotel is a real hotel. You can go to it, which now I really want to. It's like the Ritz in Paris or like the Plaza in New York City. It's not just a hotel or a place to stay. There are restaurants, there are bars, there's a barber shop, a little sewing shop. So it is a place that he can socialize fairly comprehensively while he's living there. And if you had to be on house arrest, it actually seems like a good idea to be stuck in a hotel. Alexander Rostov is a delight. I love him. He is a witty and clever, very educated and interesting man. He is a gentleman who believes in the old world order of nobility or gentility. He believes in the values of being, or the characteristics of being a gentleman. He both exhibits and values the ideas of being charming and being witty and being warm and an engaging conversationalist. But he's also very humbled by his circumstances now that he's forced to be under house arrest. He is described as being a man who tries to see the best in people, and he is overall a charming and endearing and memorable and very enjoyable companion for the journey that is the 40 years that this book takes place while he is stuck in a hotel. The hotel itself here is also a character in the book. I would suggest it plays an important role in being expansive enough for the plot and characters that revolve around the Count, but it is almost also limited. Amor Towles does a really great job of capturing the atmosphere of this hotel as well. You feel like you're in it. You can picture the extravagant restaurants, the grand ballroom. It's really beautifully written and atmospheric, and it has a great texture to it. I really enjoy the pace of this book as well. I would describe it as like floating along a very comfortably slow current in a river. It is not volatile up and down. It is very slow and steady. And I think that's consistent with our main character, the Count, who is a gentleman and is measured and calculated and intelligent in all of his actions. This book is likewise very intelligent and measured and comprehensive and detailed. It also offers beautiful prose that are the Count's musings or conversations that he has with strangers at the bar or with friends who come to visit him, that give us insights into Russia's history or the social fabric of the time, or just intelligent observations or philosophizing that the Count may consider. And it gives us sort of an insight to, or some musings over the political climate or social changes of Russia, but in a very not stuffy way. It's not overwhelming, and it's not stuffy, and it's not the central point of this book or the plot. But they're just interesting footnotes that I think are really intelligent and add to the flavor of the book and reflect the Count as a character and really sort of give us a comprehensive view of him. I feel like the style of writing even lets us begin to feel somewhat confined, like the walls of the hotel make the Count feel confined. Maybe just barely wishing that there was something more to the story, and when we just begin to feel that wall, we then are deviated into something more that can engage us into the story. But every now and then you begin to feel the perimeters and that you are stuck in the walls of this hotel. Not in a really bad way that makes you like stop and get bored, not like that, but in a way that I felt like it was a literary technique, but I don't, that might just be me. I don't really want to tell you more about the plot, because with a big book like this and with a slow development of plot, it would be hard to describe the plot with much more detail without giving away things that happen halfway through, and I don't like knowing what happens halfway through large books because it really makes me lose my incentive to read the first half of the book. So I won't do that, but I will say that there are more characters than just the Count. There is a colorful cast of characters, the people who work in the hotel. There's a chef, the waiters at the restaurant, clerks at the front desk, and bellboys. There are also guests, an extravagant but struggling actress that comes reoccurringly to the hotel. There's also a little girl, the daughter of a diplomat, in a yellow dress. These characters, these guests, as well as friends who come to visit the Count, bring little pieces of the changing social and political landscape of Russia into the hotel, which provoke more of those thoughtful musings for the Count in conversation and just in his own thoughts. There's also a character called the Bishop, who seems to have a bitter attitude towards the Count and is in many ways sort of the antithesis of the Count. The Bishop is an interesting character, which I really liked the way that his character evolved. I think Amor Towles in one of his interviews talks about how the Bishop is a bit like he's as a character reflects the evolution of communist Russia, one that is a bit clumsy and stumbles sort of at the beginning of the book, but becomes more menace and threatening as the book goes on. This book, as I mentioned, does span 40 years and is also actually a multi-generational story as well. As we come to love these memorable characters, there are more storylines that do sometimes take us away from the hotel, but the Count and the hotel remain the crux of the story, really. Yes, I don't know what more I can say. I loved this book. It was great. I gave it 5 stars. I think it is a thoroughly enjoyable read, and its atmosphere, I think, makes it great for the winter months. Right now it's November. If you are watching this when I'm uploading it, then hello, one of the very few people that watches my channel. Then I recommend reading it now if you live in the Northern Hemisphere, I suppose. This is a great winter read, is my point. I think the atmosphere of Russia and this extravagant hotel is just very cozy. And the writing is just charming and endearing. This is a great read. I gave it 5 stars and I loved it. And if you also read this book and you loved it, please let me know your thoughts. Also, if you liked this book, and it maybe reminds you of another book, recommend that to me down below. I would love to know. Thank you so much for watching this, and I'll see you in a future video. Thank you. Bye.